good evening, and thank you for joining me. Tonight's message I've entitled Restorative Justice. We pick back up in the book of Exodus. We'll be looking at Exodus chapter 22 tonight. Exodus 22, I'm going to read just one verse here. I'm going to do some background. It's be more of a background study here tonight. But let's look at Exodus chapter 22, verse 1 together. Whoever steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. Tonight's message is about restorative justice. In the Hebrew law, we see punishment by restitution, the restoration of something lost or stolen, to recompense for injury or loss. Restitution is a form of compensation to make up for loss, damage, or injury that has been caused. It can involve monetary payments, returning stolen property, or repairing damage. In a legal context, it is a mandatory punishment for certain crimes, such as theft or vandalism. The goal of restitution is to make the victim whole again by having the perpetrator repay the victim for the damage caused. Restitution is different from compensation in that it is about restoring something that was taken away, whereas compensation is about providing something to make up for what was taken. Restorative justice. You know, it may be a surprise to learn that there are several theories of justice. The lens we use to examine crime and justice matters. We here in the West view crime through a particular lens. Howard Zur, author of Changing Lenses, says the criminal justice process that uses that lens fails to meet many of the needs of either victim or offender. The process neglects victims while failing to meet its expressed goals of holding offenders accountable and deterring crime. Such failures have led to the widespread sense of crisis today. Howard Zur calls for a changing of the lenses through which we view criminal justice. Usually after a crime takes place in the West and the case is brought before the court, the time comes for sentencing. Before pronouncing the sentence, the judge methodically enumerates the usual goals of sentences: the need for retribution, the need to isolate offenders from society, the need to rehabilitate, the need to deter. And the judge may note the need for the offenders to be held accountable for their actions. Many tragedies occur in our court system with long drawn-out sentences given. Instead of a tragic confrontation between two individuals, the offender and the offended, the legal process and the media transforms it into a crime involving a criminal, and it is only secondarily remembered that there is a victim involved. You know, when we look at crime, we can see crime is in essence a violation of the self and a desecration of who we are, of what we believe, and of our private space. Crime is devastating because it upsets two fundamental assumptions on which we base our lives. The first one is our belief that the world is an orderly, meaningful place. And the second is our belief in personal autonomy. And both assumptions, says Howard Zur, are essential for wholeness. You see, crime affects our security. Our assumptions that the world, or at least the part of the world in which we live, is an orderly, predictable, understandable place. Crime, like cancer, upsets this sense of order and meaning. Consequently, crime victims, like cancer victims, want answers. They might ask questions such as, why did this happen to me? Or, what could I have done to prevent it? And many other questions. Answers to such questions, and this is important. Answers to such questions are important because answers restore order and meaning. They have that restorative element to them. They're restorative. If we can provide answers to the questions of what and why, the world can make sense again. Without answers, victims tend to blame themselves, others, and God. You know, blame, in fact, is one important way of providing answers in order to restore meaning and some semblance of wholeness. But to be whole, we also need to have a sense of personal autonomy, of power over our own lives. To be deprived unwillingly of personal power, to be involuntarily in the control of others, is intensely degrading and dehumanizing. And that's what we see that crime does. Crime destroys this sense of autonomy. Someone else has taken control of our lives, our property, our space. It leaves victims feeling vulnerable, defenseless, out of control, and dehumanized. And so victims need to move away from this self-blame, that it was something that they did to bring that action from another upon themselves. Victims need to move away from self-blame and recover and reorganize. And in order for victims to recover, they need compensation. Compensation for losses. Repayment can assist recovery. Another need is a need for answers, for information. It can be suggested that to find healing, victims must find answers. Answers to 6 basic questions. First, what happened? Secondly, why did it happen to me? Third, why did I act as I did at the time? Fourth, why have I acted as I have since that time? Fifth, what if it happens again? And number 6, what does this mean for me and for my outlook, my faith, my vision of the world, my future? As some of these questions can be answered only by victims themselves. The first 2 questions have to do with the facts of the offense. What actually happened? And why did it happen to me? You know, information can be very important to victims, and answers to such questions may provide an entrance on the road to recovery. Without answers to such questions, recovery may be difficult. In addition to restitution and answers, victims need opportunities to express and validate their emotions, their anger, their fear, their pain. Victims need opportunities and arenas to express their feelings and their suffering, but also to tell their stories. They need to have their truth heard and validated by others. Victims also need to be empowered. Their sense of personal autonomy has been stolen from them by an offender. And they need to have this sense of personal power returned to them. They need a sense of control or involvement in the resolution of their own crime, of their own cases. And this is important. They need to feel that they have choices and that those choices are real. The victims often feel that safety is important. They want assurance that this will not happen again to them or to others. They want to know that steps are being taken toward this end. A common thread running throughout may be described as the need for an experience of justice. An experience of justice. A demand for vengeance or for retribution may itself grow out of a victim's failure to have a more positive experience of justice. A more positive experience of justice. Without an experience of justice, healing may be well impossible. Justice may be a state of affairs, but it is also an experience. Justice must be experienced as real. Victims are not usually content to be assured that things are being taken care of. They want to be informed, and at least at certain points, to be consulted and involved. Many victims find a lack of resolution far removed from the criminal justice process. Those who have most directly suffered are not to be part of the resolution of the offense. So we find that strange, right? So if you're a victim of a crime, you've been assaulted, you've been harmed. And so you should play a role in this bringing about of justice, this experience of justice. We see in Hebrew law, in contrast to the punishments of other contemporary codes, Hebrew law emphasizes that punishment should fit the crime. They stress restitution rather than vengeance. The practice of restitution, making the criminal serve society or make good to the victim. This is what we see in the Hebrew law. It's something for us to continue to look into. If you're curious about more about restorative justice, maybe you didn't know about the different theories of justice. You have retributive justice, you have restorative justice. Sometimes you have a blend of different theories. But if you want to learn more about restorative justice, I recommend this book by Howard Zur. It's called Changing Lenses, Restorative Justice for Our Times. Here at the very top it says, this book will change how you think about wrongdoing and justice and mercy. And so I think it's important for us as we are going through the book of Exodus, as we are looking at the Hebrew law, to have this understanding about what restorative justice is about. Again, if you'd like to know more about restorative justice, I recommend Howard Zur's book, Changing Lenses. And so tonight, I believe what we can take away from this message is that us, with God's help, we need to take a look at the law with a different lens, one of restitution rather than just retribution. Well, I hope this message has been a blessing to you, and I hope and pray that you have a blessed week, and that you'll have an opportunity to practice restitution rather than retribution. Have a blessed week. Until next time, bye-bye.